All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My apologies for the delay. This is Judge Jones. The time is 12:09 Central. Today is May the 17th, 2023. This is the docket for Laredo, Texas. We have on the noon docket the jointly administered cases under case number 23-50038, Lifesize, Inc. Folks, this was not filed pursuant to the complex procedures, which is the debtor's absolute right to do. I do, however, have the ability to decide that the complex procedures should apply to the case. Unless I hear argument to the contrary, I intend on my own motion to apply the complex procedures. I think that will just make life easier for everybody. It will also, in the future, result in the creation of an electronic sign-up sheet, which isn't available, but in all future hearings, that would be part of the process. In every hearing, for those of you who are new to the process, we do record using court speak. We will place an audio file of the hearing up on the docket. It comes as an MP3 file embedded within a PDF. Very simple download if you want to send a copy of the hearing to your clients, or you just want to listen to make sure that you understood exactly what happened or otherwise. What I am going to do today, for purposes of making an appearance, if you know you're going to speak, obviously I've activated the hand raising feature because we've still got over 50 folks on the line. I will want you to hit 5* on your telephone. That will unmute just your line. You can change your mind at any time. What I will do is we'll simply let those of you who speak, if we'll have that announcement constitute your appearance. Then at the end of the hearing, if there is anyone else who simply wants to make an appearance just for purposes of making the appearance and you haven't spoken, you'll be free to do so. I think I got through all of the ProHocs. If I missed one, because I've been a little busy today, it wasn't intentional. I'll get those taken care of, but if your ProHoc is on file, you are certainly authorized to appear and speak today. All right, let me see. I've got 5 folks who raised their hands. Got those taken care of. Mr. Pomerantz, good afternoon. All right, good morning, I guess, where you are.
It's been 24/7, so I'm not actually sure what time of the day it is, but good afternoon, Your Honor. Jeff Pomerantz, Mitchell C. Stang, and Jones. It's again a pleasure to be in Your Honor's court today. We are proposed counsel to Lifesize, Inc. and its 7 affiliated debtors, which commenced Chapter 11 cases yesterday by filing petitions in the United States Bankruptcy Court for the Southern District of Texas. I want to once again thank the court for the court's availability and willingness to schedule the hearing on short notice. And following the bankruptcy wires, I've noticed that several new cases have been filed in this court in the last few days, and I know how much work Your Honor and your staff goes into getting prepared for these cases, and your willingness to hear us on short notice to the interest of the case is truly appreciated. I also want to thank Aubrey Thomas of the United States Trustee's Office for her availability over the last several days as we work through her comments on the first day motions, which will be presented to Your Honor today. I'm pleased to report that I believe we have consensus on all her comments. She raised a couple of additional issues on the DIP today, which I think can be handled by some recitations on the record. But I believe we will have fully consensual first day hearings. Present with me in the virtual courtroom today are my colleagues Jordan Krupp, Chia Mackel, and Ben Wallen. Mr. Krupp and Ms. Mackel will assist me in presenting the bulk of the first day motions. After I provide the court with some introductory comments and do the DIP, I will then turn it over to my able colleagues. Also in the virtual courtroom is Mark Bilbao, a Senior Managing Director of FTI Consulting, who, along with his colleague Michael Yoshimura, are the debtor's proposed Chief Restructuring Officers, as well as James Kang of Piper and Sandler, who is the debtor's proposed investment banker. We have filed an agenda for today's hearing, which can be found at docket number 32. But before we proceed with the matters identified in the agenda, I would like to provide the court with some background on the debtors, their business operations, capital structure, recent financial performance, the circumstances that led to the filing, the pre-petition sale process, and our game plan for the Chapter 11 cases. May I proceed in that manner, Your Honor?
Mr. Pomerantz, absolutely. Let me also say, Mr. Kleinman and Mr. Goldberg, I've seen you raise your hands. I'm certainly going to give you an opportunity to make opening comments. Seems to me probably best done once you hear the intro from Mr. Pomerantz, but before we proceed substantively. Anybody have an objection to that? All right. Then, Mr. Pomerantz, do you need control to the video?
If you can hand control to Mr. Krug, who will put on the PowerPoint, which we intend to use for today's hearing.
Got it. I like that. Mr. Krug pointed at himself. I understood that language, and he is in control. While he's doing that, I'll note for everybody that GoTo did an update. If you haven't updated the app, it's got some really neat features in terms of how it handles screen sharing and the videos. I encourage you. There's a video that's on the website about how to use it. So when you have 10 minutes, and I know you have all kinds of time given what's going on, probably worth 10 minutes to download the update and also use the video. But with that, Mr. Pomerantz, whenever you're ready.
Your Honor, we do hope by the end of this case and after your contract with GoTo Meet is done that you will seriously consider the Lifesize product for video conferencing, but that's for another day. Your Honor, the debtor's operation consists of two separate businesses. The first business is the VCAS business. Mr. Krug, if you could just advance the slide. The VCAS business stands for Video Conferencing Platform as a Service. Lifesize founded the VCAS business in 2003 under the name KMV Technologies to bring to market a world-class high-definition video conferencing system. A few years later, it debuted an integrated software platform that used high-level audio-visual hardware. As hard as it is to imagine now, after GoTo Meet, WebEx, Zoom, and Microsoft have become ubiquitous in our daily lives, back in the early 2000s, video conferencing was emerging as a revolutionary way of connecting people and was conducted virtually exclusively in the office environment. The business evolved over the next 10 to 15 years and integrated smart devices into the platform and distinguished itself by providing 4K video for 80-inch and larger screens, superior hardware, and whiteboard capacity. The other part of the debtor's business is the CCaaS business, which stands for Cloud Contact Center Platform as a Service, and that was acquired by Lifesize when it completed a merger with Serenova in 2020, early 2020, before the pandemic. Essentially, the CCaaS business is a way for mid-sized businesses to provide an easy-to-use, unified, cloud-based contact center solution to its customers. Think of it this way. Company sells products to consumers, needs to have a call center to deal with customer service, technology-related services. The CCaaS business has audio and visual capabilities and connects different personnel working remotely to solve a customer's problems. So a customer calls the contact center, reaches a representative working remotely. They need to bring in tech support. They do so in a video conference who is also with a technician who is also working remotely. The system is cloud-based, seamless to the consumer, and avoids the cost of running a physical contact center. Debtor Telestrat has software that enables monitoring of the company's agents to ensure quality control and compliance with industry standards. Next slide, please. This slide depicts the corporate family. The entities in purple are the debtors in these cases, and at the top are two holding companies, below which are the two wholly owned subsidiaries, essentially Lifesize Inc. and Serenova, which operate the VCAS and CCAS businesses respectively. There are a variety of non-U.S. subs, which are essentially have salespeople working around the world to sell the debtor's product, and they are not debtors. Next slide, please. I've already introduced you to Mark Bilbao and Michael Yoshimura, the debtor's two co-chief restructuring officers. They were engaged in March 2023 and undertook the role of co-CROs shortly after the beginning of April 2023. Next slide, please. Rounding out the group of debtor professionals are, as I mentioned, the Pachulski firm as restructuring counsel, FTI assisting CROs as a financial advisor, Piper Sandler as the proposed investment banker, and KCC as the noticing agent. Next slide, please. The lifesize of the lifeblood of the company, as is typical, are the employees. The debtors employ approximately 100 employees as of the petition date, 67 in the United States, and 33 employed by non-debtor U.S. affiliates. Okay. Am I still on the screen?
Yes, you are.
Okay, I just lost my video. Hold on a second. I'll continue to talk. I just don't see you. Okay. The debtor's capital structure consists of several tranches of secured debt held substantially by Silicon Valley Bank, which is providing the $5 million in new financing through the DIP. The secured debt includes a $4.7 million first priority lien, $54 million regular priority first lien, which is part of the first lien structure, and a revolver, a $20 million second lien, and a $4 million loan secured by employee retention credits. There's $60 million in general unsecured claims, which include seller notes, landlord claims, and trade vendor claims, of which the debtors will seek to pay approximately $3.4 million as critical vendors pursuant to our critical vendor motion. So why are we here? Every company has its story, and it's become commonplace over the last couple of years to blame COVID for the deterioration of their businesses, whether that is true or not. But based on one of the debtor's core businesses, which is video conferencing in offices, it's easy to see how COVID has profoundly affected the debtor's business. The combination of people working from home with the explosion of cloud-based competitors such as Zoom, WebEx, Teams, and GoToMeet was a perfect storm, and financial performance has decreased precipitously. To be sure, the VCAS business still has competitive advantages that are unmatched by its competitors. The only video conferencing facility to offer 4K video experience for 80-inch and larger displays. It has unique hardware that allows one-touch access to all the platforms, Zoom, GoToMeet, Teams, WebEx. And its Captivo software provides a whiteboard camera system that all participants can access. Nevertheless, the debtor's financial performance has been insufficient to sustain its level of secured debt. In the 12 months preceding the petition date, the debtors combined to generate approximately $63 million of revenue with unadjusted EBITDA of approximately $3 million. As a result of the deterioration in its business, the debtors engaged Piper Sandler, their proposed investment banker, in October 2021 to explore strategic alternatives. In February 2022, the debtor was able to divest a small portion of its intellectual property, generating $2.8 million in proceeds, but were unable to locate a purchaser interested in acquiring the business on acceptable terms. And by late 2022, that process had come to a halt. Facing an upcoming liquidity crisis in the last few months, Piper Sandler was re-engaged in March 2023, and based upon its familiarity with the business and experience in the prior process, it ran a targeted sale process over the last 6 weeks, which culminated with the debtors reaching an agreement yesterday with Enghouse Systems to acquire the debtor's business for $20,735,000. The debtors seek to sell their businesses to Enghouse through the Chapter 11 in a sale process that is expected to be completed in approximately 75 days if the court eventually approves the debtor's bid procedures, which we will seek to have set at the second day hearing. In the next day or two, the debtors intend to file that motion to approve the sale and bidding procedures, and believe we have procedures that will facilitate an active remarketing of the business during Chapter 11, will provide parties with sufficient time. There is a well-stocked database, and we believe that if there's anyone who is ready, willing, and able to come in and seek to put an overbid, that they will have sufficient time, and the Chapter 11 process will be able to accomplish that. As I mentioned, the debtors have obtained $5 million of fresh capital from existing lenders, Silicon Valley Bank, to provide sufficient liquidity to run the process. This time, Your Honor, I would like to move into evidence the first day declarations of Mark Bilbao and the declaration of James Kang in support of the DIP financing, solely for the purposes of this first day hearing, which exhibits were listed on the debtor's amended witness and exhibit list and filed in the docket at docket numbers, I believe, 22-1 and 22-2, respectively. And Mr. Bilbao and Mr. Kang are both in the virtual courtroom, should anyone have any questions of them or seek to cross-examine them.
All right, thank you. I think the exhibits are actually 22-1, 22-2. Any objection to the admission of the declarations for purposes of today's hearing only? All right, no objection. They're admitted. Anyone wish to cross-examine either witness? All right, declarations are admitted. Witnesses are excused from further testimony. Mr. Pomerantz?
Thank you, Your Honor. So we have the typical suite of first day motions. I intend to handle the DIP motion first, and then I will turn the virtual podium over to Chia Mackel, who will handle the vast majority of the first day motions, and then she will turn it over to Jordan Krug to deal with the critical vendor motion. And may I proceed in that matter, Your Honor? Absolutely.
I'll make sure that I make the DIP where I focus all my hard questions so that everyone will be a little worried after they follow you. Of course, Mr. Pomerantz.
Your Honor, the benefit of coming into your court as frequently as I do, we are able to anticipate questions that you have, and each time I think we get some closer to maybe a dip where you won't have any questions. Maybe this isn't the one, but that is what we're striving for, and I want to thank the Silicon Valley Bank team and their lawyers for being receptive to that. They have local counsel at Bruce Roszinski and Matt Kavanaugh, who probably know Your Honor's procedures and what is acceptable as good as anyone of the country other than Mr. Wallen. So with that, Your Honor, to finance the debtor cases and provide sufficient runway to allow the debtors to run a competitive marketing process, the debtors are seeking this court's approval of a $20 million DIP financing facility, which consists of $5 million of new capital and a roll-up of approximately $4.8 million owed with respect to the first priority lien term loan credit facility, and an additional $10.2 million owed with respect to the regular first priority lien. The material terms of the DIP are set forth in the DIP term sheet, which is attached to the motion. And refreshingly, Your Honor, Silicon Valley Bank was very pragmatic and didn't require a full credit documents in order to document the loan, which under the circumstances of this case and the limited DIP financing that's being provided, I think was able to keep costs down, and we appreciate Silicon Valley's pragmatism. The principal terms of the DIP are as follows. The new money of $5 million will be made available in two tranches. $1.5 million will be made available upon entry of the interim order. And then subsequently, there'll be two additional draws in the amount of $1.75 million made available after entry of the final order. And those are conditioned on customary things like no defaults, et cetera, in the financing. The DIP loan provides, as I mentioned, a 3-to-1 roll-up feature such that the total DIP loan is $20 million. Your Honor, we submit that the roll-up of that amount is appropriate in this case based upon the risks associated with the loan, as evidenced by the debtor's inability to locate anyone that was even willing to provide a senior priming loan to fund the process, as that process is laid out in the Kang Declaration. The DIP bears interest at 12% per annum, with the interest on the roll-up paid in kind, and comes with a 5% exit facility which will be paid at closing, which we submit, Your Honor. Both of those terms are within the market for DIP financings of this type. The DIP is secured by substantially all of the debtor's assets, including effective upon entry of a final order, avoidance actions, and provides for adequate protection means and claims customary for financings of this type. As Thomas pointed out to me, the concern with avoidance actions being pledged as part of the collateral and liens, and I indicated that we were able to negotiate that that would be done effective on the final order, so that if a committee is appointed, the committee could come in and can make its case, lenders and ultimately this court if it wants, why that shouldn't be the case. But we felt it was comfortable doing, we felt it was customary and standard, and we believe that doing it in this manner provides creditors with the ability and doesn't prejudice their rights. I'm also aware of Your Honor's practice to require a marshalling concept of looking to avoidance actions proceeds last, and I'm sure when the committee is formed and discusses with the lenders, I'm sure that's going to be one of the issues that they raise. The proceeds of the DIP are to be used to fund the budget was attached to the motion, and the budget contains what the debtor believes is sufficient liquidity to sustain operations during the marketing process, and the DIP contains typical reporting requirements and permitted variances. Importantly, Your Honor, at the time we filed the DIP motion, I'm not sure if you caught it, the DIP was subject to final approval of Silicon Valley Bank, which not only included the terms of the financing in the term sheet, but also was contingent upon their approval of the asset purchase agreement that the debtors entered into with Enghouse. I'm pleased to report, Your Honor, that prior to this hearing, Silicon Valley Bank informed the debtors that the DIP financing term sheet and the asset purchase agreement now has the complete support of Silicon Valley Bank. The DIP matures in 90 days and contains milestones which contemplate an auction in approximately 50 days and a sale closing within approximately 75 days. We will be prepared to put on evidence at the sale procedures hearing that corroborates what I mentioned to Your Honor a few moments ago, that we believe that that time period is more than sufficient to generate an adequate, robust marketing process if other people are interested. The DIP contains standard events of default and the requirement for a further court order for any relief to exercise any remedies, which we also understand is one of Your Honor's practices. And the DIP contains a customary carve-out. Importantly, it also carves out unpaid payroll expenses to the extent of the termination, a CURP up to a certain amount agreed to with a tail portion of the CURP if certain sale proceeds are over a certain amount, and a related carve-out for the Piper Sandler bonus fees, transaction fees in the retention application, which we will be filing. As also importantly, Your Honor, we never like to come to Your Honor without thinking about the exit strategy, and we have obtained Silicon Valley's commitment to negotiate in good faith with the debtor at the appropriate time in order to come up with how we are going to exit these cases, whether that's through a plan, a structured dismissal, or some other manner, and we have no doubt that Silicon Valley Bank will negotiate with us in good faith such that we will put a proper conclusion to this case, however that is, hopefully after a sale has been conducted. Your Honor, with that, if Your Honor doesn't have any questions, we would request that the court approve the DIP motion on an interim basis.
All right, thank you. Excuse me. Let me ask, anyone else wish to be heard? All right, this is, I'm sorry, yes ma'am.
Sorry, very briefly, Your Honor.
Yes.
Avi Thomas appearing on behalf of the United States Trustee. Just a couple comments. There's a term called successor cases used throughout the motion and the order, and it refers to superseding cases. And I've received clarification from debtors' counsel that they believe that they're referring to if it was converted. I just wanted to ensure that successor cases isn't referring to future cases that could potentially be filed in the future for any of these debtors. So just some clarification on that particular term. In terms of the binding effect, paragraph 12B of the order provides that there's a binding effect for the challenge period. And we would think that that might be appropriate in a final order, but having that be a binding effect for those challenge periods before we've had the opportunity to have those other parties to have input would not be appropriate for an interim order. We did address in our conversation about Chapter 5 claims being part of the DIP collateral, and just note to the court that I think contrary to what the code envisions, that those claims would be reserved for the benefit of the bankruptcy estate under Section 551 of the code. And those are just my comments, Your Honor. I appreciate that the debtor needs this financing for the sale, just trying to maintain as much of the status quo on an interim basis so that creditors committee, if appointed, could have some input there. Thank you, Your Honor.
Right. Thank you. Excuse me, I'm about to lose my voice today. My apologies. Mr. Pomerantz, I've had the opportunity to read the motion as well as the proposed order. This is about as simple as it gets, and I appreciate everybody really keeping it simple. Mr. Kleinman, just so you hear it from me, I have no issues with taking a lien on avoidance proceeds. But I am going to press you. Well, I am going to require that you include some last look language. If you want to take a shot at telling me why that's not appropriate, I'll certainly hear the argument. I haven't been persuaded yet because I don't think it changes the economics at all. It just preserves, in my mind, the right balance so that there is something there that is left. Once everything else has been exhausted, that ought to go to unsecureds. It also stops it from being used as a strategic device, which I know you would never do, but I have seen it done in other cases. So that last look language, just in my mind, is the right balance. So you've got plenty of time to preview that with your client, but I just wanted you to hear it from me that Mr. Pomerantz is right. It's coming. With respect to the other issues, the successor case issue, I think that can only be read one way. Certainly, it would not have a binding effect on a case not yet filed. That can't be an issue of controversy, but I appreciate the question being raised. Having worked my way through it, again, it's a $5 million dip. Everyone knows that I really do prefer the creep on the roll-up, but I also have the timing. I understand the timing present in the case. This needs to get done. We need to get focused on getting a transaction done, and it just seems to me that under the circumstances, what's been proposed makes sense. They're also, quite frankly, if the numbers are anywhere close to being right, it can't possibly make a substantive difference. So with that, I am prepared to grant the interim request. Did you all talk about a continued hearing?
Your Honor, we talked internally before. We haven't had the chance to talk to Silicon Valley, but I understand the court has some travel schedule in the beginning of June, and the date that would work perfectly is June 6th. I'm in the Fifth Circuit on June 5th, and I understand Your Honor is away traveling maybe the rest of that week. So June 6th, I think, would provide sufficient time. That would be 20 days from today. We're hoping that Ms. Thomas can go out quickly. We've given her the information to go and solicit a creditors committee, and we believe 20 days from now would be sufficient to get them up and running. And if Your Honor has June 6th available, we would request it.
Yeah, we'll make that work. Is there anybody who can't be available on June the 6th? All right,
Your Honor, I'm speaking at the bankruptcy bench bar conference that day. However, if everyone else is available and not attending that conference, I can have a colleague appear from the U.S. Trustee's office on that day.
Terrific, thank you. What time are you speaking? Because you can always pile in remotely. You're doing it now. And I was just at that. Hotel speaking at whatever it was, and their Wi-Fi is really great. What time are you speaking?
I think I'm at 2:30. I am remembering correctly.
All right, you want to do this, and so let's try to balance for our colleagues on both the East Coast as well as the West Coast. What about
Your Honor,
yes.
Your Honor, I will be in New Orleans, so at least I will be. I think it may be. I'm not sure if there are others on the West Coast, but I will be in New Orleans, so any time works for me.
All right, thank you. Would 1 o'clock Central Time work for everybody? Or let me ask a different way. Does 1 o'clock Central not work for anybody? All right, 1 o'clock it is. And Mr. Pomerantz, I am interlineating your order. I have added June 6th. In that first blank, I've added 1 o'clock with a P for PM, Central Time. In the second blank, objection deadline. Let me ask Ms. Thomas, Mr. Pomerantz, can you live with June the 1st?
That would be acceptable to us, Your Honor.
Ms. Thomas, that work for you?
I can make June 1st work. If I'm unavailable, a colleague can certainly be there.
No, that's just the objection deadline.
Yes, Your Honor. June 1st works perfectly. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I'll just make that end of the business day. All right, with those interlineations, well, let's hold on. So, Mr. Pomerantz, let me ask you, what is the difference between the blank for the objection deadline on page 37, in which I've interlineated in June 1st, 2023 at 5 p.m., and the blank that effectively says to allow actual receipt of the foregoing? If it's got to be filed, you're on CME-CF, so you're going to get it instantaneously. I didn't understand that.
Yeah. I don't, unless Mr. Krupp has any comment to that, I don't think there is any difference.
Mr. Krupp, am I missing something?
No, Your Honor. This is, you're looking at the interim order, and of course, I was not the author of that. SVP's counsel was, but with being a little bit presumptuous, I'm sure that they all agree with you that just may be a holdover from an old-fashioned type of order that really doesn't apply anymore in our modern day.
No, it makes perfect sense. So what I'm going to just do, because again, everybody's going to get instantaneous notice, is I'm just going to end it. I'm going to end that sentence after ESQ period. Does that work for everybody? All right. I see some nods.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Then with that, I have signed the order, and it is off the docketing.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think my job may be done here today, so I would like to turn the virtual podium over to Ms. Mackel, who will walk the court through the next several motions on the court's calendar.
All right. Thank you. Let's see. Okay. Ms. Mackel, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Shia Mackel of Pachulski, Singh, Zeal & Jones. Can you hear me, first of all?
Loud and clear. Thank you, and thank you for using AirPods. Perfect. Did you buy a set for Mr. Pomerantz? Because normally he's got the big old clunky phone. So
I even use the wired ones because they're more reliable, I think.
Got it. I'm just poking fun at Mr. Pomerantz. Go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
I appreciate it.
All right, so starting with item 2 on the agenda, which is the wage motion, it's docketed at entry number 9. So through this motion, the debtors seek to pay employee wages, salaries, other compensation, reimbursable expenses, and continue their employee benefits program. As you would expect, and I'm sure you do, the employees in this case are the lifeblood of the company's businesses, and here the debtors employ 67 employees. In addition, the debtors utilize the services of 72 independent contractors who perform their duties and functions alongside the debtors' employees. So as in every business, the debtors' employees rely on their compensation and benefits to pay their daily living expenses and those of their family. Honoring the debtors' obligations to the employees is absolutely critical to stabilizing their businesses and maximize the value of the enterprise. So in the motion, we included a chart setting forth the various categories of obligations. And because the debtors make their wage payments on a semi-monthly basis, so on the 15th, and the case filed on the 16th, you'll notice that the wage obligations and corresponding payroll taxes and payroll processing fees are relatively nominal. The withholding obligations are a little bit higher because they don't come out on the 15th, at least for some of them, the FSA and HSA and 401k contributions. Similarly, the commission program is paid on a quarterly basis, so that amount is relatively higher, but it covers over a quarter worth of the commissions. And the same for the medical, dental, and life coverage. The obligations that are being sought to be paid under this motion will all be within the priority cap. And after that, there are also independent contractor or workforce obligations. So in that case, for the 72 independent contractors who are also not paid on that same semi-monthly schedule, there's a higher pre-petition accrual. And finally, the Canadian workforce obligations, you'll see this is nominal because they are paid on the 15th. The debtors do, and I wanted to call this out specifically because the debtors do directly pay the wage obligations of their Canadian non-debtor affiliates. These are treated in the debtors' books and records as intercompany transactions, and authority to continue that practice is sought in the cash management motion, which I'll get to. But the practice is crucial to the debtor's business, and based on the way that the company structures it, as I'll get into, all revenue generated by the non-debtor affiliates comes in at the debtor level. So the benefit of their work inures to the debtors, and if they're not paid, the debtors will be irreparably harmed. And as I mentioned, the pre-petition amount at issue is relatively nominal at $3,000. So we shared this motion with the United States trustee and incorporated their comments to the order. Unless the court has any additional questions, we'd ask that the order, which is docketed at 9-1, be entered.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard? All right, I've had an opportunity to review the motion. This is one great importance. It's also one of practicality, especially in light of the future of the company. I do agree that the employees are its greatest asset. Again, I'm repeating things I've said many times, especially critical in a business like this. I don't have any concerns. Ms. Mackle, what I did want to tell you that I've done, when I looked at the order, and again, I just want to tell you, this is not a criticism, I just want to tell you the changes that I've made, is there were two paragraph ones. I don't like that, so I just made one paragraph 1A, just so if someone wants to reference something, they can reference 1A and not 1. There were also...
Oh, I'm very sorry.
No apologies, not a criticism. When I change somebody's order, I want them to know. And there were some formatting issues that were just, I'm going to call it weird, but I use that in the legal sense. So what I've done is I've used the PDF editor to make the formatting look as close to normal as I could possibly make it. Those are the only changes I've made. I will grant the motion. I've signed the order as modified that I've identified on the record, and that is off to docketing.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. And I see that indenting on some of those other paragraphs, and I appreciate your correcting that.
All easy.
All right. So item number 3 on the agenda is the creditor matrix motion. It also includes the relief that you already noted, which was implementing the complex case management procedures. So within the motion, we requested that for the reasons you noted on the record earlier in the case. In terms of filing a consolidated creditor matrix, as Your Honor is aware, there are 8 debtors in this case, and the preparation of service lists of creditors for each debtor would be burdensome, time-consuming at this juncture. And we're additionally requesting the authorization to file a top 30 list across all debtors, requesting redaction of confidential information in the creditor matrix, consistent with Section 107C, to redact the confidential information which may put individuals at risk. And finally, we'd like to mail a single notice of commencement to the individuals on our creditor matrix. So for this motion, we also shared it with the United States trustee and received comments which are incorporated. So unless Your Honor has any questions, I respectfully request the entry of the order docketed at 7-1.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard? So let me, if we could, number one, I don't have any issues at all in general with the requested relief. You know that I'm very sensitive to the disclosure of the information of individuals based upon some recent events and other cases. I fully recognize, and for those who are listening, I fully recognize that there is a First Amendment issue present here. It is just my belief that until we are able to come up with a procedure that guarantees the safety of people who did not come to this bankruptcy case voluntarily, that we need to err on the side of caution and protect those who need protecting most. So what I would like to do in paragraph 6, Ms. Mackle, if you don't have an objection, is that I don't want you authorized. I want you directed, first of all. And I just want to say is that all information of individual creditors, because there is a process by which that information can be released to those parties who will deal with it responsibly, I think that strikes the right balance. And again, I will put on the record for the U.S. trustee, I know that this is not in accordance with their policy. I have asked my complex committee to evaluate alternatives and to come up with a process that is the right balancing. I'm also happy to take a proposed policy from anyone else who wants to share something, because I do think that this is a serious problem. And all I'm doing by doing this is I'm putting a Band-Aid on the situation until someone can come up with something that works. With all of that said, Ms. Mackle, do you have any objection if I make the changes that I've discussed?
No, we have no objection, Your Honor, but the United States trustee did want to clarify with us that it did not include names, so it sounds like if you're including names, they might have a comment to make here.
They can put names. I did not mean that you don't list who the people are, but I don't want phone numbers, addresses, email addresses, Twitter handles, whatever it might be. I want that information. I want to be able to approve someone having access to that information. I wasn't suggesting that we just go creditor 1, creditor 2, creditor 3.
Okay, all right.
Ms. Thomas?
That works for us, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Aubrey Thomas on behalf of the United States trustee. That's consistent with what the U.S. trustee requested in this case, that simply it be the names of the creditors, but that they would redact addresses and emails and things of that nature. Thank you, Your Honor.
Right. So what, Ms. Thomas, what I'm going to say is I'm just going to say all information other than name. Are you okay with that?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. I made that change, and with that, I will grant the motion. I have signed the order, and it is off to docketing.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. So moving on yet to item number 4 on the agenda, which is docket number 8, is the cash management motion. So this motion reflects the standard request to allow the debtors to continue their existing cash management system as of the petition date. The cash management system is illustrated on a schematic, which can be found at Exhibit D to the cash management motion. So through the debtor's cash management system, they rely, which consists of 18 bank accounts, which the debtors rely on to receive, transmit, and transfer funds. It consists of sweep and operating accounts for each of the debtors' 3 business segments. And in connection, we're also seeking authority to pay pre-petition bank fees that are related to the cash management system, and importantly, to continue their historic practice of intercompany transactions and transfers, including with the non-debtor affiliates. So as I mentioned earlier, in connection with the wages motion, the revenue generated by the non-debtor affiliates comes in at the debtor level, and the debtors generally fund the expenses of the non-debtor affiliates. Continuation of this practice is of critical importance as the vast majority of the foreign entities handle sales, which generates more cash than they ultimately cost. We shared this motion with the United States trustee, and we did receive comments and incorporated those. And unless Your Honor has any questions, we would ask that Your Honor enter the order on an interim basis, and that interim proposed order is docketed at 8-1.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard? All right, given what we've got in terms of anticipated auction, excuse me, have we thought about when we'd like a continued hearing?
I think the same date, Your Honor, the June 6th, if that works.
Oh, you want to do it on the June 6th, okay? And what time did we say?
1 o'clock
I think it was
Central.
1 o'clock.
I know, I just wanted to see if anybody was really thinking and listening and remembering.
The problem is I have to think in multiple time zones, so I couldn't be sure if it was 1 or 2 because I was remembering both.
Well, if you work with Mr. Pomerantz, you're supposed to be a miracle worker.
They usually control my schedule, Your Honor, not the other way around.
I'm just having a little fun. I have a not fun afternoon ahead of me, sorry. All right, and with the, it's still good, everybody, with a deadline of June the 1st for responding? June 1st it is.
Yes.
And I'm going to change the.
All right.
I'm going to change the 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock just so it tracks the other order. On the deadline to file objections. And with that,
Okay, thank you.
I will grant the motion on an interim basis. I've interlineated the order as we've identified. It's been signed, and it is on its way to docketing.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. Next on the list is item number 5 on the agenda, docketed at 11, is the taxes motion. So the debtors, as you would expect, incur, remit, withhold, and pay taxes in approximately 17 jurisdictions. The debtors believe that the pre-petition accrual is approximately $75,000 for sales and use taxes and $111,000 in income taxes. The debtors seek authority to make payment on those pre-petition taxes, which we believe is necessary based on the substantial risk, if not to continued operations, potentially through the asserting of liens or seeking to lift the stay or accruing of interest. We also recognize, as Your Honor has raised, that jurisdictions are dependent on receiving tax payments, and since they'll be entitled to priority anyway, or in the case of trust fund taxes, not property of the estate, nothing would be served by preventing these taxes from being paid. So unless Your Honor has any questions, I would respectfully request that you enter the order docketed at 11-1.
All right. Anyone have an objection? All right. You obviously listened to yesterday's hearing. I'll pose to you. Can you tell me what an ad valorem tax is?
I'm guessing added value, but I actually did not listen to yesterday's hearing. I think I got that out of reading the transcript of the party sitting for state hearings when I was preparing for this.
Fair enough. Yeah, you can yell at Mr. Wallen. He knows that I always do that to somebody. I actually had someone look up the actual Latin translation, and I was impressed. So with that again.
So based on the value thereof, apparently.
Exactly. All right. With that again, I think that this is part of the process of business as usual. It is not only part of being a responsible debtor to pay your ongoing obligations to governmental authorities, it's also just part of being a good corporate citizen. I don't have any concerns. I think it's payment in the ordinary course is the best possible thing for all parties concerned. I have made no changes to the proposed order. I will grant the motion. Order's been signed, and it is off to docketing.
Thank you, Your Honor. So moving to agenda item 6 is the insurance motion that's docketed at number 10. So the debtors have a customary insurance program consisting of general liability, property and casualty, business property, cyber liability, directors and officers liability. The list of the insurance policies and what they relate to are listed on Exhibit 1 to the proposed order. This is, again, a standard motion that also has to do with, I think, being a good steward of potential damages that could occur later. So unless we did share the motion with the United States trustee, received comments from them and incorporated those. So unless Your Honor has any questions, we would ask that Your Honor enter this order, which is docketed at 10-1.
All right, thank you. I've had an opportunity to review the motion as well as the proposed order. Anyone else wish to be heard? All right, I agree with all of the statements made by counsel regarding the necessity to be adequately insured in order to conduct business in a go-forward posture. Again, recognizing what we think the future is going to be, at least in the short term. I have zero concerns. Certainly got to trust management to make those types of everyday business decisions. I will grant the motion. Let me grab the order. Order has been signed. It's on its way to docketing.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Last item for me is item number 7 on the agenda. It's docket number 6, the scheduled extension motion. So as you're aware, typically the debtors would be required to file schedules within 14 days. We're asking for a 30-day extension on the scheduled period, so for a total of 44 days, given the complexity of the cases and the size of the debtors' businesses. I know that the court cares about the balancing act between providing transparency to those who wish to view the schedules expeditiously and also making sure the information contained in those schedules is accurate and won't require amendment. And so in balancing those concerns, we believe a 30-day extension is appropriate here. Similarly, on the 2015.3 report, we're asking for an extension to that same date. So unless Your Honor has any questions on that, we would respectfully request the order docketed at 6-1 be entered.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard? All right, I absolutely agree. I prefer correctness versus speed, so I think the requested extension makes perfect sense. I do hope that the debtor understands that this is so we get best possible first set of schedules and SOFAs that we can possibly get. I'll grant the motion. I sign the order, and off the docketing.
All right, thank you. So that was my last item. I will turn it over to Mr. Krupp to present the last motion on the agenda.
All right, thank you, Ms. Mackel. Nice job. Mr. Krupp.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Again, a good afternoon to you. You may have noticed, Your Honor, that we do not have a utilities motion, which I know that the court is pretty used to seeing, and that is simply because we did not need such a motion under the circumstances of this case and the way that this company operates. But the hallmark of those utility motions, of course, is to make sure that there are providers out there, and certainly this is the point of Section 366 as well, that there are providers out there who could, with a flip of a switch, put a company out of business on the very first day of its reorganization case. We have a similar situation in this case. They are not utilities, but they are a group of critical vendors who provide disproportionately, most of them provide telephony and data hosting services that really build out the data and networking infrastructure that this company relies on in order to provide its own services to its customers. There is also a small group of essential vendors or critical vendors that we have referred to in the motion as shipping claimants. These are shippers and warehousemen that are, many of them foreign-based, outside the U.S., but are absolutely essential in maintaining the continuity of the supply channel, both incoming and outgoing from this company. And as I'm sure the court can appreciate, those parties, especially those that are situated outside of the borders of the United States, may have a creative attitude toward the automatic stay and may wish to assert liens or possessory liens, certainly, on a lot of inventory and goods that would be exorbitantly expensive, if not practically impossible for the company to replace. And despite how we all may feel about the immense power of the United States bankruptcy court, generally outside of the borders of the United States, we are faced with the practical reality that companies will do what they will do. And so, to avoid the untoward effects of that, we are including a small handful of shipping claimants in the relief being sought in this motion so that their relatively small pre-petition claims can be paid so that they remain happy and willing to continue to move out our product in the ordinary course without seizing it and secreting it in some warehouse somewhere that we don't know where that is. That amount, by the way, is stated in approximately $120,000 for those shipping claimants. Much more significantly, however, are the critical vendors that we speak of in the motion. These critical vendors, as I mentioned a moment ago, provide mostly data service, data hosting, telephony services that this company relies on, really without alternative and without the ability to replace it. That is the lifeblood of the ability for this company to continue to serve its customer base. There are maybe some economic context would be appropriate here. The debtors, at least now, estimate approximately $27 million of unsecured debt generally in this case. We are proposing to pay up to $3.3 million to the critical vendors. That is obviously, we're seeking to have the court grant us authority to exercise our discretion and only pay those amounts that we believe are necessary to continue to earn the cooperation and the participation of these critical vendors in an ongoing business relationship with the debtors on ordinary trade terms so that they're not imposing terms on continued business with them that would cause cash flow problems and timing problems for the debtor. That 3.3, in case the court hasn't yet done the math in its head, constitutes only approximately 13%, just a hair under 13% of the total unsecured debt in this case. But as I mentioned before, the claims of these particular critical vendors, we believe in our experience and our knowledge of our business relationship with those vendors, that they are going to insist on some, if not complete, payment of their pre-petition amounts in order to continue to do business with us on ordinary trade terms. And that is almost without exception, in part because none of those critical vendors can be held to their deal vis-a-vis an executory contract. Our initial review of that relationship is that none of them are governed by executory contracts that would be a lever to be able to persuade them to continue to do business without payment of their pre-petition claims. It should be noted as well, and so I will note it, that in some instances the debtors believe that they will need only to pay some, but not all, of the pre-petition amounts owed to some of these critical vendors, and that is because of the ongoing business relationship that the debtor believes it has with those vendors, and knows that in sort of business-to-business conversations there is likely to be instances in which the particular critical vendor may say, look, we don't need everything, just get us this much of a downstroke on what we're owed, and we'll be happy to continue to work with you. Working with you really takes the form, as I'm sure the court can appreciate, in a vendor agreement. And these vendor agreements, the one that we are proposing is very customary for operating companies of this type in Chapter 11. It essentially proposes a quid pro quo. That quid pro quo is, if we are going to pay you some or all of your pre-petition amounts, then you have to agree not only to provide us business and to ensure the continuity of your services and goods to us, but also you need to do so on customary trade terms so that doing business with you does not become an economic burden or a practical problem. And so in each instance in which the debtor will be providing payment on account of pre-petition claims for these critical vendors, we will be asking the critical vendors to enter into the form vendor agreement that is attached to the motion to make sure that there are no abuses of the extraordinary relief that we're asking the court to grant here. I am pretty sure that is the end of my comments with respect to this. I'm happy to answer any questions the court has.
I really liked the eloquent presentation of when you cross the border, nobody cares. I really appreciated that. I got it. Look, we're all focused on a sale that we hope will preserve a business. We hope that it will continue to provide jobs, and the last thing that this needs in the interim is a service disruption in its critical business foundations. So, and again, I have no reason not to trust that the debtor's management will make wise and prudent decisions. I don't have any concerns at all with what you've requested. I think that I've certainly got to give them some discretion to make good business decisions, which we hope will maximize the value of the debtor's business. So I don't have any concerns. Is there anyone else that wishes to be heard? All right, I will grant the motion as requested. I have signed the order that was attached to 12-1, and it is off the docketing. Mr. Krupp, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And Mr. Goldberg, I totally forgot. I meant to come back to you before we got started. You've been very patient, and I do apologize. Do we need to go back and address something, or is there something that you need to bring up? So, Mr. Goldberg, if you haven't, you only have to do it once, but I need for you to hit 5-star on your telephone. Haven't seen you yet. So make sure it's 5-star.
How about now?
Oh, there you go. Loud and clear. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor, and no problem at all. I was trying to speak earlier because due to some glitch, my client, which is SVB Innovation Credit Fund 7, otherwise known as SVB Capital, one of the pre-petition lenders, did not get notice until just before this hearing due to some oversight. So during the hearing and Mr. Pomerantz's very comprehensive presentation, I was able to catch up, check the term sheets, and I think we're all clear by now. So you're not calling on me work to everyone's benefit.
Well, I appreciate your working around my shortcomings. I did not mean to ignore you. I just went on to something else. Mr. Kleiman, I offered you the same opportunity, and although I asked you a question, I didn't give you an opportunity to make comments. Anything that you would like to say? Mr. Kleiman, 5-star on your telephone if you haven't already done it, or you may have me muted from your side. There you are.
Apologies.
Quite all right.
I hit star hearing in reverse today.
Common mistake.
No, rising earlier to on behalf of the bank and to thank Your Honor and all the participants here today for their hard work, and look forward to being in front of you again.
Terrific. Thank you. Let me ask Mr. Pomerantz, in terms of timing, do you know yet when you're going to need court time, or is that something you're continuing to work on and you'll reach out and let me know when you're ready?
So that you as you often do, you anticipated my next comment. Your Honor, we have two things that are coming up, and I was going to ask if Your Honor would schedule those for June 6th or would like us to go through your calendar clerk. The first thing, as I alluded to, is our sale procedures motion. We would expect that to get that on file either today or tomorrow. The second thing is a non-insider CURP, which we will be filing because it's really important, as Your Honor recognizes, and as the company surely recognizes, keeping the people who are running the day-to-day operations, and it'll be critical to the sale process, keeping them motivated and retaining them through the sale process is critical. So we will be filing that motion. We previewed it with the U.S. trustee. She's asked for some information, which is typical what she asked for. We have been speaking with the lenders. We believe they have support, and of course, we will engage with the committee when appointed. So we would seek to have them both heard on June 6th at 1 p.m. Central too, if that is acceptable to Your Honor.
Sure. Mr. Pomerantz, the CURP, the motion for the CURP is already on file. It's at 16. I've read it. So setting that for the 6th is just fine with me. Also fine with me if you go ahead and set the bid procedures for the same time. And obviously, if there's an issue with respect to the bid procedures, or we've just gotten a committee, if we're going to have one, or Ms. Thomas has some issues, we'll take it up at that time. But I have no problem with you going ahead and scheduling it for the 6th, because we need to get that process started.
Your Honor, may we put a June 1 deadline for a response if we get that motion on file by tomorrow as well?
Makes perfect sense to me, and if somebody comes in late, I'm going to read it, but having the deadline is a good thing.
Thank you, Your Honor. With that, that's it. And again, I really want to take the time to thank the court and your very supportive staff for working through this with us today.
Absolutely. I've also got a number of lawyers on the phone that I don't normally see, so let me just take 30 seconds. If you will look on my website, you will see both an email as well as a cell phone number for my case manager, Albert Alonso. That's there for you. You know what not to talk to my staff about, but I don't ever want to be the reason that you can't be heard. So take those numbers down, take that email address down. He takes text and he responds. Most hours of the night, I let him sleep between 2 and 4 in the morning. Other than that, he's on the job. But in all seriousness, he's there so that I can give you the time that you need. So just make note of it. It's there. I'm going to go get some water. Everybody enjoy the rest of their day, and we'll be adjourned until 2 o'clock Central. Thank you.